You are listening to the Intelligent Vocalist Podcast, episode 144.
Welcome to the Intelligent Vocalist with John Henny. This is the podcast dedicated to help you be a smarter, better, more informed singer. And now, your host for the Intelligent Vocalist, John Henny.
Hey there, this is John Henny. Welcome back to another episode of The Intelligent Vocalist. I do so appreciate you spending your precious listening time with me. All right, today on the podcast, I am very happy to have Nikki Loney. Nikki Loney is a well-regarded vocal educator who specializes in children. And Nikki runs the Full Voice podcast as well as the Full Voice website, where she sells fantastic books for children to learn to sing. And this topic is not without controversy. There is a debate within the voice teaching community as to whether young children should even be studying voice. And I talk with Nikki about this controversy and also just children's vocal education in general, picking appropriate songs, courses of study. And I think this will be of real interest if you have a child who is showing interest in singing. I always enjoy talking to Nikki, and today was no exception. So without further delay, here is Nikki Loney and Children and Singing. Nikki Loney, welcome to the Intelligent Vocalist.
Oh, thank you so much, John Henny. I am so excited to be here. I love your podcast.
I love your podcast. I love being a guest on your podcast. It's so much fun. I love chatting with you.
I'm always happy to chat with you. You're such an inspiring voice teacher. And I have to tell you, I tell all my students to listen to your podcast. And now they're going to listen to your podcast and they're going to hear me.
That's kind of like meta on some level. Yeah. So I want to approach this, my podcast audience. It's always been really interesting for me because I started this off for singers and I seem to have attracted a fair number of voice teachers. So, but I want to approach this because, and you just did a wonderful webinar for my Contemporary Voice Teacher Academy members. And I want to thank you again for that. But you've got my head spinning just with a lot of questions for my audience, because those of you who are passionate about singing, which I'm assuming you are, listening to this podcast, your children, if they share that passion, very young children, you find your child is starting to sing, there's often a question out there about how young can a child start singing lessons? And there's a bit of controversy with that. And so I want your take.
Oh, well, first of all, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity because, full disclosure, my evil agenda is to encourage teachers to welcome young singers into their teaching studio. And you're right. There, in our industry, in voice teacher land, there has been a bias towards working with children. Now, the conversation is changing, and I love it. I love that more and more teachers are doing amazing things with young students. And what's interesting is I have a lot of colleagues that are in the classroom, right, that are music education specialists. And it's a bizarre thought for them, especially if they have Kadai background or ORF background. It's absolutely bizarre to think that you wouldn't work with a child with their voice. Their training is everything is about the child and their voice and nurturing their musical skills through their voice. So in the private teacher forums, in our industry, for the longest time, it was discouraged that children, should wait until they've gone through puberty, or that they needed to be much older before they started. And people can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes, like to start formal voice training. And that goes back very much to that master apprentice approach that was taken with serious formal voice study. But we know so much more about the human voice, right? The information we have about anatomy and acoustics is just amazing. And we also know more about how people learn. And when we take that information that's now available to us, it's actually quite ridiculous to think that we wouldn't want to have some fun in the teaching studio with a young child. And really what it comes down to is personal preference. So as a teacher, I respect any teacher that knows which demographic they prefer to work with or that they specialize in. And I think that's smart business. But there is incredible opportunities for voice teachers working with children. And there are so many benefits for children who are taking private voice lessons. And I don't know how long we have, John, but I can talk all day about this. So
we got a little time. I usually try to keep these around 20 to 40 minutes, like the average commute, although I'm in LA, so we could do a 2-hour.
Oh, okay. So we can talk for a long time.
But so maybe you can just give us some of the main objections that people have to starting young. I mean, what is some of the main arguments?
Oh, okay, sure, for sure. Well, the big one that always comes up is that you're going to hurt their voice, right? That training the voice at that age would cause vocal damage. Well, we know the memo went out actually a couple of decades ago about the fact that teaching a child to sing or to use their voice is actually beneficial because children are going to sing. You can't stop them from singing. The voice is the first instrument. And some children, I mean, my neighbor is always telling, I can hear their kids singing in the backyard all the time. So why wouldn't we have a professional guide them and help them to learn how to use the voice properly? And again, the reason that a lot of people felt that way is because they were going to try and teach the child the same way that you would an adult, which wouldn't work. The repertoire wouldn't be appropriate. But there's so much music out there for kids now, like really great music. And even if you're working in the studio, like with my students, I give them the opportunity to sing commercial music, but again, with them understanding that, volume, how loud we sing is something that we're paying close attention to, and how we use our voice kids are actually really good at taking that instruction. We think that it's far too complex for them to understand, but we can break down the voice in a way that makes sense and play-based learning. So that information, that myth that children are hurting their voices when they sing. Now, I'm going to reach out to get you this documentation, but my good colleague and dear friend Dana Lentini, who's also an academic who's advocating for, children in lessons, her research went very deep, and she was looking into a lot of the work done by speech language pathologists on children's voices and children's voice pathology. And again, I don't have the numbers right here with me, but it was like 1% where the issues were caused due to singing. So there's no pandemic of children with vocal issues due to singing. Usually children struggle, often I find in my experience, it's kids who are in sports that are screaming or yelling at sports things that are doing a lot of damage to their voice. And again, when you work with a professional, you have somebody guiding you and informing the parents and the students, this is healthy use of the voice, and this is what you have to be careful of. So again, that myth that learning to sing is hurting them, it's not true. And it was a reference to a time when you studied with a master teacher and you needed to be at their level in order to understand their instruction. That's where that whole thing came from.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. But I'm thinking back to, I think it was like the first season of America's Got Talent or so. I remember there was a young girl, maybe 11 or 12, and her big song was, "And I'm Telling You I'm Not Going" from Dreamgirls. So it's completely not age appropriate. And I remember she sang it. And I think this was the attraction. It's young girls singing in a very big adult type of voice. And and I think that's where some voice teachers get upset, where they see these children pushing their voices and they're starting to already hear a wobble and perhaps even being encouraged through whatever vocal lessons they're getting. And, maybe speak to that where a child is trying to sound too old.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And again, that's where good communication with your students, your clients, and your families comes into play. Pop culture is so tricky. I mean, we have families that watch these shows, and we do celebrate the child that can perform at I'm doing air quotes here, but like an adult level. And again, even just it sometimes seems whoever can sing the loudest must be the best. And that's so unfortunate. And again, I think it's just about making families aware that age appropriateness is something that, again, often families aren't thinking. Like, they're not thinking about the lyrics. They're not thinking about it or experiencing the music in a maybe, I'm going to use the word holistic way. Because I've had conversations. Like, I have a lovely little 9-year-old in my studio, and dad comes up to me and goes, "I want to sing Shallow with my daughter." And I'm like, "Why don't you come in and we'll sit down and we'll have a little chat?" And again, it's just bringing to their attention why, but it's still being respectful of the music that people love. Pop culture is such a powerful presence in our lives. And of course, we want to celebrate abilities, but again, we need to make sure, and you're right, there's a lot of examples of kids out there that are over singing, that are singing the songs that I certainly don't want to see a 10, 11, 12, 13, 15-year-old sing. And I know that my colleagues and I have these conversations, and they're awkward sometimes with families, but when you put your child out on a stage, you have to remember that they are telling a story, and we're seeing a young person telling a story that an older person should be telling, and that causes a lot of awkward feelings. And sometimes that conversation goes well, and sometimes that conversation doesn't go well, and parents might feel a little, uncomfortable or a little put off, but that's okay. I think it's just important that we bring it to their awareness that when we see children saying stories and telling words and singing in a way that is much more mature than they are, we're taking some risks. Maybe it's to their vocal health, and also, again, we're putting our children out there in a way that we might not be thinking about, that we're not aware of. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Children in entertainment, and I'm just going to segue a little bit here. It's a very odd thing, because it's where we allow children to do basically adult jobs and workplace that we don't really do in other industries. Mm-hmm. We're not going to allow them to go and be a welder, but we'll let them be, they're in the workspace and a very high pressure workspace. And so that's and I've seen children really do it successfully. And it's usually the child leading the parent. And these children seem to be old souls, and they really emotionally are ready. And then I've seen parents kind of push children into it that aren't ready. And that's created some sad scenarios that I've seen.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I do have some young students that I feel that way. They do understand, and they are capable of maybe, a deeper understanding, and they are very self-motivated. And yes, I think every voice teacher has had the stage mom or dad. Now I would like to just say, I don't have a problem with stage moms and dads, because I had a stage dad. He's still my stage dad. He still has an opinion about what I do, even though I'm almost 50. But I think it's about having clear boundaries about, this is what I feel comfortable as your child's voice teacher to do. And, these are my concerns. This is the message in the song, or this is, we're really working the voice in a way that I feel as a professional we need to address. But what I want to point out though, this is something that's starting to happen in a lot of sports for kids. My son is very heavily into baseball. My son is a sports child. We're not his people. My dad and his dad and I are both musicians, and we have a child that is so interested in sports. It's so strange, but it's interesting because I watch his coaches. I watch how the coaches work with the children, because there's a lot of things you can learn from other coaches working with children. And, he's very concerned about proper mechanics of throwing the ball, because kids are getting hurt. There's kids that are 12, 13 that are having the Tommy John surgery. Right.
Yeah. And there are all that is still developing. And so there are certain pitches that children can throw that can just.
Exactly. And there's a really great analogy that might work if you're dealing, if you're a teacher and you're trying to express your concerns. Sometimes it's helpful for some parents to explain it, just like in sports. The kids' muscles, ligaments, bones, all still developing, and they are more likely to have injury if you're not careful, if you overuse them. And it's the same with young singers. There's limitations to how their volume levels, and you can overcome that with using microphones properly. So if you're a voice teacher, and you're teaching contemporary music, I think it's so important to encourage acoustic singing, of course, but also getting them to use the microphones properly is a very important skill. And then the frequency that they're singing, I can't speak for the other shows, but I remember when Matilda was here in Toronto, they cast several young girls, and there were several understudies. And I do believe, from what I heard, is they were never back-to-back performances for those kids. They did not have two shows. And I know that there were similar things for the Billy Elliot run. So, we're not asking these children like we would, a 20-year-old singing on Broadway to sing night after night after night. They're not doing that because they know the limitations of young voices.
And I think the industry's become more aware, teachers are more aware. I think that this is a really good time for children and voice education.
Big time.
And so I wanted to ask, let's say you're a parent and, most children sing, they walk around singing, but when should you say to yourself, wow, I think maybe my child is showing enough interest, or there's enough voice there that I should get them into lessons? When should a parent consider lessons?
That is a great question. And I think, with children, you want to find the appropriate type of lessons. So in my teaching studio, and a lot of voice teachers are now offering, and I love this. This makes my heart so happy. A lot of voice teachers are offering what are called like introductory vocal classes, small group classes, and they are a wonderful way for the young students to be introduced to vocal music in a small group. And it's play-based learning, and it's lots of games. My introductory vocal class, so last year I think I started at age 6, so I did like a 6 to 8 class. But this year, the class was so successful. My students just absolutely had a beautiful time, and the parents were absolutely thrilled with how much the kids were enjoying themselves and how much they saw a boost in their confidence. That this year, I've actually started a 5 to 6 group and a 7 to 9 group. And these are small group classes. And again, play-based learning. We're exploring the voice. We're learning language. We're playing with rhythms, and it's very like music education inspired, but the focus is on the voice. So if you see, if you have a child that is really like about that age, like I think about the time they go to school. So like 5, 6 is where I personally prefer to start, but I have colleagues that have introductory music classes that are for 3 and 4-year-olds. And again, it's not necessarily just a singing lesson. It's a music appreciation and exploration, but the focus is on singing rather than piano. So courses like music for young children, you know, that's kind of what they do, like, except that the focus is then moved to piano. So it's introductory music, guiding them into the private piano lesson. And now you have voice teachers that are offering the introductory vocal class, guiding them and leading them if they're interested into the private voice lesson. And it's an amazing opportunity. I think for parents, it's finding the teacher that is very interested in that type of education, and avoiding the teachers that, you know, my biggest pet peeve, if I may, on your podcast.
Oh, you may.
My biggest pet peeve is voice teachers that don't want to work with the kids, that are very, very quick to make the statement they need to take piano lessons or sing in a children's choir first. I think that's bad advice, because not every child is interested in piano lessons. Not every family has the piano in their home. And a children's chorus might not be the safest place for a child that is shy or anxious. That might be too big of a room, a sound, and experience for somebody that's shy, or a child that's shy. They might need more of a smaller group or a one-on-one experience. So I wish my colleagues, if I could impart something on the, like, if you don't want to work with children, by all means, please don't. But I'm sure in your community, there are teachers doing amazing things with children and offering that safe space to get them started. And I always cringe when I see when I see people turning them away. I even had locally, there was a piano teacher. Like, I was hunting her down, who was telling people that they shouldn't be singing until they're 12. And I had a couple parents who actually contacted me and said, "Why are you teaching young children? My son's piano teacher said you should not." And I was like, where does this woman live? Where is she on my street? Because she's in trouble.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, so find those teachers that have those introductory classes and just get them started and see where it goes. And again, like it's all play-based learning. They're very comprehensive. The kids get to explore music in a safe place, a fun place. It's just so much. There's just so many benefits for children.
Well, speaking of benefits, at the music academy that I run, a lot of times when parents will come in and they want voice lessons for their child,
sure,
they want to help build self-confidence or break shyness is often the main goal rather than developing a singing voice. And so, so speak to the changes that you see in children who take singing lessons but are dealing with shyness issues.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, there are a lot of children who desperately want to sing, but are dealing with anxiety. There's a lot of kids that are struggling with things like selective mutism, where their bodies their bodies are flipping into the fight or flight. And what's really heartbreaking, and again, I have a soft spot for students that need more assistance, like students that are really shy. Like, I want them all. I love giving them a safe space. So kids that have anxiety, their bodies are triggered into the fight or flight. And sometimes the triggers are so small. It could be loud sounds. It could be that there's too many people in the room and they're too crowded. It could be that the lights are too bright and they're getting too much stimulation. Like, there's so many things that can really trigger children. And our classroom teachers they're trying so hard to create these spaces where kids can calm down. There's a lot of schools now will have sensory rooms where kids that get overwhelmed with too much can go to chill out. And when the fight or flight switch is flipped, one of the most recommended ways to help the body reset is through breathing. So focusing on the breath and taking a deep breath. And as you know, in the teaching in a voice studio, we are constantly making our students aware of the breath. And when you have a student and you recognize that they need that safe space and they need someone to help them manage that, again, in a singing lesson or a vocal class, you're making them calm down. You're making them focus on their breath. You're giving them a lot of skills that they can take elsewhere. And what I love about the small group classes too is they can see their peers are also shy. They can see that singing makes everybody feel a little vulnerable, so they can support each other. And in my vocal classes, like, I don't force the kids to sing by themselves, but what often happens is as soon as one student puts up their hand to try and sing something by themselves, that will give the others confidence. So again, you're modeling active listening. So you're listening to other people sing, and then you're given the opportunity, and it's so helpful. I've had more students recommended to my vocal classes for the reason that they're not participating in class because they won't put up their hands, they won't speak, they won't answer. And it's a great safe space that you can offer. It's such important work that we can do with these students. And again, play-based learning is so powerful. And letting them play singing games and letting them just explore the weird sounds that the human voice can make without judgment, without correction. oh my gosh, like when you just have fun and you can make them laugh, and, and you can even use things like animal sounds. So, kids that have a hard time kind of navigating the higher notes, well, maybe we'll just hoot like an owl, or maybe we'll be a spooky witch and we'll make those sounds. And again, it's just a fun game. They often laugh. They see their friends doing it, or they see the teacher modeling it, and you're giving them permission to try this. And as soon as they start participating, they start to feel, nothing bad's happening to me. I'm going to do this more and more. It's so powerful. And it's amazing to see the confidence of the children as they work through this. And it's so wonderful. And that's one of the compliments I get from parents all the time is thank you for giving my child a safe space and helping them discover their voice. Like that, I have so many cards and thank you emails from parents who have noticed a huge difference.
It's remarkable what singing and then as you gently guide them into like safe performance opportunities, just to watch these children just blossom.
Oh,
and
big time.
It's amazing. Just the self-confidence that comes from this. Getting involved in your child's vocal education, communicating with the teacher, and also helping your child practice. How can parents be a good musical parent?
Okay. Well, see, this is my opinion on it, and this is how I run my teaching studio. And I know that for some teachers, this is a challenge. So I have, and I know you do too at your academy, which I love. So you could probably speak to it as well. But I have what's called an open door policy, and I think it is imperative.
Always. Yes.
Personally, I feel it's inappropriate for a teacher to shut the door on parents. I think that to have that intimate relationship with a child you need to have parents involved. So I actually have a lovely little seating area in my teaching studio, comfy chairs where parents are encouraged to be there. And especially in the beginning, and even my teenagers, like even my teens that I have taught for years, I want mom and dad to drop in on a regular basis because, there's a lot going on in their lives. And I always joke, but it's true. I mean, children are master con artists. And if mom and dad don't know, they're going to play that. So I think a lot of reasons why families and children don't do well in music lessons is because of a lack of communication and a lack of involvement.
Agreed.
And, I always challenge teachers with this. A lot of teachers will say, parents are a distraction to a productive lesson. And my question is always, well, what is a productive lesson? Is a productive lesson where you give them a whole bunch of information and send them home? Because without mom and dad's support, your productive lesson just went through the window because they don't remember what you said. And they won't practice what you said unless somebody's there at home to remind them, oh, your teacher said this. You're not supposed to be singing that, friend. You're supposed to be singing this. My son does the same thing with baseball. Like I sit there I live at batter zone, John. Like that is where if you can't find me at Full Voice Music, I'm at batter zone. And I watch my son with his coach, and my son, I'll be like, Damien didn't tell you to throw the ball like that. And he'd be like, yes, he did. And I'll be like, well, let me just text him right now. And he'll be like, fine. All right. They will push that envelope. So when we have parents involved, then the lines of communication are open. And then the other thing we have to recognize too is there's a lot going on in kids' lives. So our agenda, maybe we need to learn this song and do this exercise, but maybe we might need some information from mom and dad that they've had a bad day, or they're being bullied at school, or they're really overwhelmed with homework at school right now. So can we just make lessons fun? Like this is information that teachers need in order to make that relationship work and to make lessons productive. And productive isn't just what I want to achieve. It's what the family can handle. It's what the parents can support. And again, I have great relationships with my moms and dads. They bring me coffee and food and gift cards and they're welcome. I want them to be there. I often see a lot of teachers saying, all these kids dropped out of my recital. And it's like, well, were the parents involved throughout the year? Were they welcome in your teaching studio? Do they know you? Do you know them? We don't have to go out to dinner with them, but we have a relationship with their child, and we need to have a relationship with them so that they can support us and their children. So for parents out there, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask teachers how they can support their child. And don't be afraid to say, I'm going to sit in on this lesson. Hopefully the teacher has that open door policy. But you need to be involved, and you can ask questions. I love it when parents ask questions. I don't feel threatened. That's my job. I feel that is part of my job, is to answer any and all questions so that relationship and those lines of communication are open. And I think that's so important.
You very often, parents will wonder, how do I choose a voice teacher? What do I look for in a voice teacher? And I think what you just said is incredibly important, because if you find a voice teacher and they don't want to answer your questions and they don't have an open door policy, you should really consider whether that person is the right teacher to work with your child, because quite frankly, you're the one paying for the lesson. And so you need to be a part of this process. And if you're busy, if your child's in a lesson and, let's say you've got to take a phone call or be answering emails while they're doing it, I would set a timer so that the last few minutes of the lesson, your timer goes off and you politely enter the room and just say, okay, I'd like to know what my child can work on. Just let the teacher know I'd like to reserve the last few minutes to communicate with you.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I know that, again, a lot of teachers will say, well, kids don't want to perform, or the kids are uncomfortable performing for mom and dad. And for me, that's one of the first things that we need to overcome, that's the first challenge that we need to help our students with, is your child should feel comfortable singing for you. If they're not comfortable, they're not going to practice at home. And the practicing struggle will be epic, and it won't be very long until you will be frustrated and you will pull your kid out of music lessons. And that always breaks my heart. Children and singers need to be comfortable to sing in front of their people. And I always, it's okay if they're uncomfortable in the beginning. I mean, I always tell my students, performance, like learning to perform and being comfortable with performing, you're basically learning to I'm going to do that again. You're learning to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's what performance is. You got to deal with all the bad feels and put those aside. So one of the first steps in working with a young singer is you have to sing for mom and dad. And I can't tell you, I've had many students come to me where the parents are like, oh, they don't want me to come in. I'm like, too bad. There's a seat for you. And, and the kids are often very, very upset about that. But you know what? It goes away within like a lesson or two, and they're fine with it. And that is one of the biggest obstacles for students is if you can't sing for mom and dad, man, we have problems. So yeah, for parents, now on the other side of that, if I could add, it is important for parents to give their child some space to practice, right? We want that private practice space where they can make mistakes and they can sing without knowing that somebody is eavesdropping. I think that's super important. And I have certainly told parents that, like, give them some space. Let them just sing and have some fun. And then, come into the lesson. And then if they feel like singing for you. And I also tell parents, never force them to perform for people either. Like that's not necessarily the way to get them comfortable with performing. So, there's both sides of the story. Yes, you have to sing for mom and dad, but yes, you also need a private space. So again, with teacher and parent and student working together, I think you can find that balance.
Now you have at thefullvoice.com.
Yes.
Or not Full Voice, but The Full Voice. The Full Voice. Some free resources that I think especially parents that are already musical, already studying singing, can utilize some of these resources just to kind of get started on their own with their children as well. And of course, there are great resources there for voice teachers, and you have wonderful curriculum that I highly, highly recommend. I use it at my music academy. But yeah, talk a little bit about what you have there that parents can use.
Oh, sure. Well, so The Full Voice is we are dedicated in researching and developing resources for the young singing students. In my early years of teaching, it was always so apparent and so unfair that piano students have so many fun, colorful, amazing resources, and the singing student didn't have anything. So that was basically how I got started as a resource creator. Was I created these one-page activity sheets. And again, it was an amazing tool for parents so they could see some of the concepts that we were working on in the voice lesson, rather than just showing up and singing a few songs and then heading out the door. And so we love creating resources for the young singer. And we have a fantastic, every month, we have Freebie Friday. So the last Friday of every month, we have a free download, and you don't have to sign up. You don't have to give me your email. You just download it in print. And we have everything from solfege, tonic, sol, fa flashcards that teachers or parents can use. We even have partnered with some amazing children's composers who have given us like new songs that they have released for children. Those are available as well. We have all sorts of visual activity pages. So like warm-ups. And we also, like every Halloween, we do a spooky vocal warm-up. Again, the theme for us is fun and exploratory lessons. So, and we try to do resources for all ages. We have a new resource coming out this winter. It's our first resource that includes a lot of songs. So my colleague and partner in crime, Mim Adams, both of us, we went to school for jazz. And I love introducing jazz to my teens and to my students when they're ready for it. Now, you do need, I feel, like a base foundation of music theory and music understanding before you dive into that. So this is our first kind of intermediate release where we're introducing melodic ornamentation and rhythmic improvisation, and we've got some jazzy little arrangements of some of the Christmas songs. But there's so many free downloads, and I highly encourage people to take advantage of them, try them out. If you have questions, you can reach out. And so if you're a parent and you have a student that loves to sing, check out some of the games and some of the videos. If you're a teacher, oh my goodness, you can, if you want like a 40-page free sample of our resources, you just have to give us your email and we'll send that out to you. We really just want to celebrate the singing lessons. We want to give teachers the tools for them to provide holistic, comprehensive vocal music lessons. And one of the biggest feedback and compliments that I get from teachers is student retention. When students have good materials, when parents can see progress with the materials, they are confirming their investment in this vocal music education. And it's so lovely to see a child just blossom with their music and with their singing and with their voices. And, I love it. I have students that, I taught when they were, I have a funny story. So the little girl on the front of the Full Voice workbooks, she was one of the first 6-year-olds that I ever had in my studio. She was one of the first that I invited back in and started working with. She's now going to university.
Wow.
And I mean, it's amazing how music and how many students we touch, how many lives we touch. It's just amazing. My husband's coming in. It's okay. You just in case you hear the door. It's okay. It's okay. John can
That's
edit
all
this
right.
better.
It's a loose podcast. It's jazz.
No, put your clothes back on. Oh. Okay.
Not that loose.
Anyhow, so there's just so much information and we're always happy to share. You can also follow me on Instagram, The Full Voice, at The Full Voice. I have games and I share a lot of fun stuff that I do with my kids all the time. I do I call them mini master classes, and I'll actually have a little singer with me. And I'll just show people how I play with them and how we explore. So please follow the Instagram feed and have fun and share your stories. I love connecting with people. And I think that if you're a parent and you see that your child really wants to sing, there are teachers out there doing amazing things. And the opportunity, if you find a good fit and you have that opportunity to get them involved in healthy singing with lots of wonderful, friendly performance opportunities, take advantage of it. The benefits are like self-confidence, the ability to deal with their anxieties much better, the confidence to participate in school. And, some of my little singers, they might not continue in vocal lessons, but I know that they have the confidence to try out for the choir or to try out for the school musical. And I love that. I mean, it's just so much. And I have so many singers too that go off to university and they go into very competitive fields like journalism or music therapy. And I know that they're helping people and their singing lessons have a lot to do with getting them there. And I just love that. That makes me sleep well at night.
I just love your passion. And I so appreciate the work that you do for voice teachers and for children. And I so want to thank you for coming on and being a guest and taking the time.
Oh, John, thank you so much. And again, I love your podcast. Shout out to all the intelligent vocalist listeners. And you keep doing what you're doing because, my goodness, it's just so powerful. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye. Hey, if you'd like to know more about me, please visit my website, johnhenny.com. And if you're interested in learning to belt, I have my brand new course, Boldly Belting. Just go to boldlybelting.com. And until next time, to better singing. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.